Now. All right, welcome back to another episode of Culture Talk. It's been a minute. Today's conversation is always been a minute. I know. Today's conversation is on Black Lives Matter. So obviously the past few months have been painful, emotional, aggravating to say the least, with the countless lives lost from George Floyd to Breonna Taylor, to Rhea Milton, to Toyin. It's endless, and it's not a recent occurrence. It's been happening for generations, but a lot has been brought to light in these times, and we've invited three friends of ours to come and discuss this with us. So guys, if you'd like to introduce yourselves in whatever order, what your name is and what you're studying at UCL as well.
So to start with, I'll call it then.
Yeah, you call it.
Let's start with who is on my right on this. So it's Jessica.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm Jess. I'm in my second year at UCL. Almost done. Thank God. And I study PP.
Nice.
Move on to Blessing.
Hi, I'm Blessing. I'm first year undergrad at UCL as well, studying English.
Nice.
Hi, my name is Ikaay, undergrad at UCL. I do arts and sciences.
Nice.
It's also big in history because it's the most guests we've had in one episode.
Actually, yeah, literally. So there's something. Our normal setup wouldn't allow for this. So look at us.
Making history.
It's written down in history books.
Exactly.
The biggest
see it.
Exactly. So what a time to have it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, on this topic, obviously the three of you, Ikaay, Jessica, and Blessing, we were in the UCL town hall that we did as part of the BME network, where we voiced in a safe space sort of our opinions on the whole Black Lives Matter movement. And we've been, in the last few months on social media, been exposed to a lot of quite graphic, grim reality that we live every day, but that's hard to see and deal with. And how have you guys been coping with that in this time? How have you been? Because it's very mentally draining, and I've been finding it hard myself to actually deal with that and take a step back when necessary.
To be honest, like I'm just to be honest, like I'm just avoiding social media. So I just need to take a Twitter break. Twitter can be very toxic at times, I'm sure you guys know. So I just took a break from that. Like Instagram, I think is cool because you can kind of just, I follow a lot less people, so it's a lot easier to manage like what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
But a break is definitely needed. Sometimes I've like slipped up, like I'll go on like UC Love and like I'll argue with somebody. But,
yeah, with them ones.
So like I'm only human, man. But yeah, I've just kind of trying to opt out.
Yeah. Blessing and Ikaay, how's it been for you?
I think it's been quite interesting, quite hard at times because obviously I do like YouTube and like online stuff, so I kind of feel like I want to post more just because of that kind of user platform that I have.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, I think for me it's important to take time. I need to like take time off social media and just post what I feel is right to post, and like take breaks where I need to take breaks. Like, I haven't posted in weeks on YouTube, but I've still been on Instagram and Twitter, so I've kind of just had to figure out what's best for me, I think, and keep talking to people as well. Kind of just vent and just get your feelings out there. I think talking is very important.
Yeah, sure.
Me, it's definitely been like just knowing when to step back and take a break from like social media and stuff like that. I've taken like several breaks. Sometimes they're like 24 hours, so not that long. Sometimes they're like a week, so a lot longer. But it's just like we're like in an age where it's like we're getting bombarded with information.
Yeah. Trauma
like,
porn, and just information.
Yeah, and especially now when like the information is something that's like detrimental to your mental health. And like genuinely just straight up traumatizing, like the kind of stuff we hear about on a daily basis. So like it's just like knowing when to step back and take a break for yourself, looking after yourself.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because it's disgusting that we have to be exposed to things like these traumatic videos and information for people to take note and actually understand the gravity of the situation. It's disgusting that that's what we have to live. Like, can we rely on mainstream media to actually give an accurate account of what happened at Central Park, for example, or, you know, what happened to George Floyd, for example. Like, it's disgusting that we have to come to this, and justice is not also being met in many of these instances. Breonna Taylor's murderers haven't been brought to justice. There's so many accounts of it, and it's been difficult to deal with. And then also, Shuhan, how's it been for you as well, even?
So for me, I've had like multiple conversations with you on the phone. Like we've spoken on the phone after everything's happened. For me, it was more of, I wanted to be on social media because I wanted to see how uneducated others are, and I wanted to see where the gap is in the people's mentalities out there. I spoke to you on the phone, and I said some cases I did see some people putting others down for whatever they were portraying on social media, supporting the BLM movement. But for me, the issue there was maybe you don't appreciate how or agree with how they're pushing out the BLM movement, but them starting that off or whatever they're doing might be their first step in educating their circle. You know
So
I mean? We have different circles and different groups. So for me, it's been not coming off social media. For me, it's been staying on it and seeing sometimes the stupidity of some people, and then others seeing how others are enlightening their own circle.
That's interesting, because I think there's been sort of two states of minds, or like various states of minds, in terms of allyship and performative action. Are people just doing this just because and these are the same white people we've seen talking racist like shit in the past, or do they actually care about educating themselves? So what's your guys' opinion on allyship and performative action? Because I'm genuinely interested to hear this.
Honestly,
Okay, you look like you're gonna
I came like, all right, this is my time.
Bro, for me, it's like, I feel like allyship as a concept has a performative element to it.
Agreed.
Defo.
Because when you look at the numbers, right, like, it's been over 100 days since Breonna Taylor was killed. 20 million people posted black squares on Instagram, but only 9 million people have signed a petition to get her murderers charged. Which is, it doesn't add up. Like, signing a petition is the bare minimum. Like, the bare minimum that you can do, that nobody will know that you've done, but you can actually do something to support the movement. But, you know, when it comes to actual action, we see a lot less people taking the steps to, like, educate themselves and talk to their racist family members, talk to their racist friends, and have those difficult discussions that we have to have every day. For me, it's like, I think allyship is nice, but I don't think it's valuable. In the sense that at the end of the day, these people will go to sleep peacefully. You know, this isn't something they have to struggle with in the way that we do. They can decide at any point to just pack up their bags and walk away from Black Lives Matter, or walk away from talking about politics, because at the end of the day, politics isn't going to affect them in the way that, you know, it affects us. Non-Black people, and white people in particular, have the privilege of being apolitical, because whoever gets in power is like,
because they can sympathize with it. They can sympathize with it for a few days, and then you know, that's gone. It's not a problem.
So at the end of the day, I honestly think it's up to us, and
I think it's up to us to keep the voice alive, because what I realized is an incident will happen. People will go on about it for a week or 2 weeks, and then it's back to normality. I think this sort of discussion, or what's going on now, has to be a constant battle. It has to be kept alive constantly. And if people are there telling you, okay, we've heard about it, these are the people that we need to start educating more. Because
But the thing is, I feel like it's not, like, I'm not going to educate somebody. I'm not going to go out of my way to do that, because who educated me? Like, do you know what I mean? A lot of us had to go out of our way to go and learn these things. It really is nowadays as simple as Googling, like, anything literally on race that you don't understand. So I think that, I mean, at first I was all for, like, allyship, and I was like, yeah, like, we have to work together. But, like, honestly, like, fuck that. It's not, I can't rely on someone who, like Ikaay said, could just go to bed at night and decide that this isn't for them anymore. And even within our own communities, like some Black people are apolitical somehow, you know? So we really can't afford to rely on allyship. We have to assume that people are not going to be for us so that we can do what we need to do. And if people want to join in and they want to support the movement, then that's great. But I think having that reliance is just it's damaging. And I think trying to educate people who clearly have seen this, because Black Lives Matter as a movement has been on social media since like 2012, 2013. You've never heard of Black Lives Matter? I'm sorry, but I can't physically, I cannot fathom how you haven't heard. I mean, if you haven't heard, like, genuinely, that's fine, but I'm not going to sit you down and talk to you about why you shouldn't be racist or how you can educate yourself, because the information is out there. So, and who's paying me? Nobody.
Tell me about it.
I'm not going to educate anybody for free. I'm sorry.
It's a job, man. It's a job.
It is a job. And on that topic, it's go on.
What's your opinions on it, Leslie?
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, it's about being seen and kind of being seen doing something, whether it's an Instagram post, a Twitter post, sharing something, going to protest, taking pictures. And I saw a lot of that going on. Like, a lot of people just like posing with banners and kind of like witty statements and stuff. And it's kind of like, do you really care? Or is it about the retweets? Is it about the likes? And I think, going back to what Jess was saying, like, if people want to do stuff, then fine. But I'm not going to sit here and force you or expect you to do anything at the end of the day, because it's not that valuable, I think. And I think it kind of goes back to kind of the way in which people think Black people are perceived, like non-Black people, and like what was happening in Brixton the other day, and people are like, this is what's like holding back the movement. And like, you can't say that, because the whole movement is about Black people being treated rightly and like being given basic human rights, and like, you know, being treated in proportion to the action that's happened, and not because like you don't have to be this good Black person to be treated right. So yeah, I think that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, very true. I mean, I honestly don't even have much more to add to that, but I think baseline, a lot of what makes it even difficult for people in the UK to even understand or even want us to even begin to educate them is because, put it like blankly, the UK is very ignorant on racism.
Yeah.
Extremely ignorant on racism. And people just, it doesn't get through to them because it's not spoken about in the education system. It's not spoken about in higher politics. It's just vacant. People believe racism is only someone calling someone the N-word, or to them that's all racism is, when there's very microaggressional situations that happen across the UK that I've experienced myself, and I'm sure you guys have as well. So like, what's your opinion on racism in the UK, and how has it impacted you and like you guys? Yeah. I mean, that's a very big one to talk about. But,
yeah,
I know.
So I can say, so obviously, from the racism say that I've probably experienced or I've like seen is opportunities are different. So the opportunities we receive are very different to what others get. Others of white, let's say white descent, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the biggest one that for me has been we're looked at twice before given something.
Yeah.
Where there's always a question mark around it, or there's always you can tell that they're thinking something. So for me, it's the opportunity that we have to work. For me, I feel like we have to work harder for where we get to. That's what I would say.
Easily. It shows itself in so many ways, from profiling. I mean, your profile the other day, Shuhan, I've been stopped and searched in Holloway for no reason whatsoever. And the Stop and Search Act in the UK now is based on an archaic stop and search law, which was based on racism back in the 1800s in the UK.
To be honest, if in a certain area there's been cases of certain activities happening and stop and search is enforced, I understand that, yeah. And I'm not against everything that the police do in this country. I'm talking about UK here, right?
Yeah.
So for instance, the other day when I was profiled and stopped, the white officer that did stop my car and stop me with the 5 other officers she was with, straight away said, I'm a brown boy in a reasonable car. That's
Wait, she said that?
She said those words.
She said that to me. And then I said, excuse me, what did you just say? She goes, oh no, we're just doing random stops and checks. I'm like, no.
Random.
What did you say? She goes, yeah, we're just doing random checks in the area. And I was like, no, that is not what you said. So the thing is, for me, I'm completely fine and completely ready to be respectful to officers. In that situation, I would have been fine. But she jumped out with 5 other officers, all white, by the way, all white, surrounded my car and straight away said, you're a brown boy in a reasonable car. So that, where do you go from there? Do you know what I mean? And what can we do from there?
I cannot believe she actually opened her mouth and said that.
No, literally. Like, do you know how mad that is? Similar situation to when I got stopped and searched for no apparent reason. They just walked up to me and were like, we're conducting a stop and search in this area because you meet the profile. Even someone around my area was stopped and searched the other day. They said you meet the description of a brown or black boy who's supposedly carrying weapons. You can't just stop and search random people, and this won't happen to white people. It doesn't happen to white people.
Yeah.
So they won't see these microaggressional acts. That's not even microaggressional. That's just aggressive. Just
no, they straight up said.
yeah, they straight up said.
This is,
yeah.
But this is the thing. Like, I think people in the UK, like, I'm just generalizing here, but I feel like it stands, is they think that racism is this very like explicit and like violent act.
Yeah.
It just isn't. And like, I think a lot of the time in our own communities, we've sort of said like, well, racism doesn't always have to be violent and stuff like that. And we understand this because we can see when something is racially charged or just flat out racist or a microaggression.
Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of the time we kind of act as though some things just aren't as bad. But like, why do we feel that way? We shouldn't stand for any of this shit.
No,
plus, like,
definitely.
This idea that racism in the UK is covert blows my mind, because like, who is it covert to? It's not covert to me. Like, I can certainly see it. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of the time when we talk about racism, it's always people of color that are the subject, but we're viewing it through the white lens, which is fucked up. Because how the hell are we going to talk about race, not talk about white people, yet view racism through their lens and how they see it and how they see something they don't experience? It doesn't make sense to me.
It doesn't.
That was it.
That's something that's interesting, because like when people are talking about racism with regards to the UK generally, they're like, oh, racism is like really covert and like insidious in the UK. And it's like, to who?
Right?
In the UK, no black person or like non-white person in the UK that you will ask that will say that to you. You know what I mean? Like there's no one that will say that. But, like the UK, I feel like because of the way race and class have been linked in the UK, racism has become like so
exactly
like just the fabric of the country.
Hit the nail on the head, because
it's almost undetectable.
It's completely different to America's redlining. Like here, classes blend. So you can be like, even the road I'm looking at right now, there's £1 million houses across from me, mostly white homes, and most of the ethnic people are living in this estate opposite that. And because of that, people will say, oh no, how can it be racist? You know, like we're all together, we're all blah, 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 blah. But they just don't walk the same life and they don't live it either. And it makes some of them incredibly hard and ignorant to not even educate. Like, I don't even want to educate these people, but they don't listen or hear or see where we're coming from. And it's why I get where you guys are coming from on allyship, because I do believe in certain aspects, for example, the workplace and education, we do need a collective voice in some sense, not just amongst black people, but amongst some white peers in higher positions who need to recognize, you know, our efforts as academics, as researchers. But one thing I've been struggling with is how can we reform the UK curriculum to take more account for race? What is the direction there? Because we're all UCL academics, and we're in a very elitist, white, male-centric university with very archaic...
So before we answer that one, it'll be interesting to know. You can say if you feel comfortable or not, but with the time you've been at UCL, well, you don't have to explicitly explain the situation, but has there been a situation where you felt racial tension in UCL? But you don't have to explicitly explain it. I'm saying,
Yo, Jessica, I'm not gonna lie. I heard,
really?
yeah. I want to hear you. I want to hear you guys report to this.
I
heard from you guys.
If you feel comfortable, speak it. I just wanted to
speak your mind. This is the time.
Let me tell you something. PPE is the whitest degree you can do. It's the whitest degree you can do. When I thought, I want to do PPE, honestly, I wasn't thinking about race, which was very naive of me. But I wasn't thinking about race. I just thought, you know what? Like, I really respect these disciplines. I want to study this. I care about it. Yada yada yada. So I come in now, and I'm the only Black person in my course, and I'm like, I have never experienced this before. Because like, for most of my life, I grew up in East London. I went to comprehensive secondary school. I went to basically a grammar school for sixth form, but it was so mixed. And even though like the sixth form I went to was like elitist, I found there were brown people everywhere. Do you know what I mean? So I never thought
East, innit?
There were brown people everywhere. There's Black people. There's like Eastern Europeans. There's so many. It was so mixed. So it was definitely a culture shock. And I don't want to say it's been hostile in terms of like I felt, oh, I'm so alone in this world. Like I didn't feel that way, but I definitely noticed certain things. Like, man, one of my course mates didn't recognize me when I changed my hair, and like I got brave. He was like asking me, like, he was like, what? He was like, oh, what do you study? What year are you in? And I was like, we were in the same like, I'm literally so.
Oh man.
I'm like so mind blown by this. Or even like, I remember in my first year, I spoke to my personal tutor about how problematic some of the readings were, and how like they were just so colonial and just bullshit. And I went to his office hour because he really seemed, do you know what I will say about UCL academics? A lot of them are very liberal and very moderate. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of the time it seems as though they're super approachable and you can talk to them about these things because they're going to care about you, but they're not. And they do it.
They won't actually do it.
They don't care. They don't. They do not care. They listen. They've heard you the first time. If they don't listen to anything you say, it's because there's not enough pressure. And if you're the only one,
definitely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
When you're drowned out.
But I talked to him about the issues I had with some of the readings, and he was basically just like, well, we don't want to, make the course too controversial because then it will take away from learning the important, like, political skills, whatever the hell that means. Like, I was telling him about, like, some racist joke that was on, like, the group chat, and how, like, no one on the group chat could talk about race, and people were bringing up animal cruelty and all this shit when we were talking about race. I was like, I don't know what's wrong with these course mates, like, why are they doing this? And he was just like, yeah, not everyone's from the same place that you are, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you actually don't need to tell me that because I know. And that was in my first year. Like, I'm never going to shut up. Like, I've been on my department's ass, like, about race issues. But these, they're beating me down. I'm not going to lie. They are beating my ass.
Listen, keep up the fight. Honestly, keep up the fight.
Do not listen. Even this year, like, I emailed my tutor for one of my public policy modules, and I'd been in his office hours at the start of the year, complaining as per. And then I sent him like a long email basically saying like, you need to do X, Y, and Z. I'm not happy about this course, etc. And then in his response, he goes, I see you, I hear you. Actually, I was thinking the other day about what you said to me in an office hour in autumn. I was thinking, so you heard what I said, but now I had to be angry before.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. And then they'll frame you as that angry Black person.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I beg, they can call me whatever they want.
No, facts. So you got to stick it on these, man. Facts.
You have to. But it's the liberal, moderate, white academics or non-Black academics that are the issue. Like, there's no point arguing with racists. They're not going to change their mind. Yeah. You have to like make those changes by putting pressure on these liberals because they're so scared to like seem biased, as if like that's something like inherently problematic, which I don't think it is. But yeah, I would say that's generally my experience like with race at UCL in like the academic sense.
Yeah. All right. Ikaay or Blessing, either of you.
Blessing, you go.
I've got like a lot I want to say. I can't say too much though, just because like we literally we could get in trouble if we do on our course. But there's been quite a few open letters that I've been part of recently about things to do with racism within our department, also decolonising our curriculum. And some of the responses we received were a bit questionable. I mean, for us, we had to rewrite our letter quite a few times to kind of make it more respectable. We were advised to do that. But I think it was the PhD students. They basically wrote a letter which was more direct than ours. And basically the response they got was like, what's your tone of communication? And like, yeah, because you're creating a hostile environment, and we can't really do anything productive if you're kind of like speaking to us in that way. And I was just like, are you actually like, are you mad? Like, I screenshotted it and put it in the group chat we had, and I was like, guys, am I bugging out? Like, and everyone was just like, no, this is crazy. And it's just like, you shouldn't have to speak in a certain way to be listened to. Like, no one should tell you how to be frustrated. And like, why do you care so much about how we're speaking to you? It's more about the content of the piece. Exactly. Like, there were some serious like things like raised within the letters, and I was just like, I feel like it was quite flippant. I don't think they're doing that much. Like, my department definitely could do better. I don't know how many Black students there are that do English. I just know there's one other student in my year group. But it definitely isn't diverse. The curriculum isn't diverse. We were meant to have a few seminars on race, which got cancelled because of the strikes. But like, our department strikes every year, so that they could have just put it on another week. And I was doing the readings as well. And I think it would have been beneficial to have those readings. And the thing is, those readings aren't even like compulsory either. So again, it just shows kind of how elitist it all is. And you know, sometimes I wish maybe I should have done English elsewhere, but it's sad that you have to kind of think that way and that it isn't diverse in the first place. But yeah, that's kind of all I've got to say, I think.
What have you got to tell us, boy?
Me? All right, so I'm on the BASC, right, which is Bachelor's in Arts and Sciences. It's a relatively new course. It started in like 2005 or 2006 or something like that. And in the 15 years that it's been running, I am the first Black male on the course ever.
Are you joking?
Whoa.
Breaking records. We need
That's
to fit.
Crazy.
I'm gonna hang you up on my wall.
That's crazy to think about, right?
Right, that's crazy.
So like, for me, and like the thing about BASC is that you can do pretty much any module. So I was considering doing documentary filmmaking. Yeah. But you know, it's a group project thing. You're paired up with someone else, and the BASC is 70% like French people, international students, and like the rest is like UK students, and then there's 2 Black people, me and my friend, on the course. So like being paired up with someone in a course like documentary filmmaking, where I'm going to be inclined to make a film about like the Black experience, because that's what I'd want to document. Like, that's what my life is about. You know, it just wouldn't work. This year, I'm gonna take a module called critical race theory. It's like an American discipline. And my main concern when like signing up to do that module was, do I want to be like the only Black person in a room of white people talking about why racism is bad? And
this is the thing. The problem is also coming from a white perspective. This is the problem.
Exactly, and it's still from a white perspective. And they're like, I don't know, I just don't want that situation where they bring something up and they're like, so what do you think? And
I can just, bro. Honestly.
You know, it's just like a lot of it is just the thought process. Yeah. That, you know, the extra factors that we have to take into consideration when we want to do the simplest things that white people just get to do. Yeah. Without like thinking about. That's something that sucks for me. I've had like a few explicit incidents. I've had lecturers throw the N-bomb around.
Yeah, I've had as well.
Not like with a hard R. They said Negro. Well. They didn't say like.
Yeah. No, I've had the actual word. Yeah.
Somebody said.
Shuhan, was it Negro or Negro? I can't even remember. No, you know the lecture I'm talking about.
It was a hard one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happened. I was sitting next to the only other black person on the course at the time, and we just looked at each other like,
listen, do you know what we need, yeah? We need the ACS group chat that whenever that happens, yeah, all black people meet up on campus and storm into that lecture room. That's fully what we need. That's fully
but you
what
know
we need.
what? This comes back to that point about allyship, because it shouldn't have to be that Ikaay or Blessing or whoever is in their lecture and looks for the black person for support. Everybody should be shaking their head and saying, what the fuck did they just say?
Yep.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
In our lecture, like, because I personally was not expecting that anyone.
I wasn't sure if I heard it.
I was just there, like, rubbing my ears, like, is it working? Is my ears working? Like,
oh my goodness.
It's the shock. It's the shock for me. You're like, wait.
I looked at Shuhan. I was like, bro, did you just like? I wasn't listening this whole lecture, but I finally listened for a second, and then she's just saying that.
That whole lecture was going in one ear, coming out the other. But as soon as I heard that, I like got up and I was like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it was like a shock that sounded like, was that even said? Is this real? Am I hallucinating in a lecture or something? Like, what is going on? Like, I don't know. You're in so much shock that you just don't know what to say. But, and the thing is, what I found weird in that is, you could tell. So basically, our course IMB, right? There's a mix of us guys who are, different, backgrounds and whatnot, and we had a group that was majority white, right? And in every lecture, you could tell the coloured, we would sit at the back, and then the whites would be at the front, and that was automatic.
Like back of the bus days.
I love the phrasing of that.
Yeah, back of the bus.
Yeah, that's how it would happen automatically, right? And it would never come across as no one from us colored lot would mix with the white lots. It just didn't happen in our course, and that's as bizarre as it is, that it just didn't. We came from a school which was very mixed, right? Even though we had our school had a lot of differences, it was very mixed. So that was weird in the first case. But when that situation happened, when I looked around, not a lot of other people were too shocked about it.
No, yeah, of course.
Oh, they just exposed themselves. They've been saying it.
Of course. Trust me, yeah. Facts.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Facts. Trust me, when they're rapping to Jay-Z or whatever it is, of course they're saying it.
Yeah, of course, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. And I could go name dropping because I ain't at UCL no more. They ain't got nothing on.
Oh, drop those names. Drop those
names. I'm out here. You can't do that to me.
Talk your shit, Shuhan.
I have like 5 more months, so like 4 months.
I wait till you're out, so that nothing happens between, just in case I say something.
But so it's guilty by association, right?
Yes.
So now.
But they're very much like that. Even though I said it.
Exactly, they're very me. So you always get me in trouble anyway. So there's that. But yeah, go on.
What can we do to create a change at universities or in the education system?
Get more black representation, more. Yeah, what can we do, honestly? Because it's something.
What do you think would be the steps we could start taking in changing everything? Because change needs to happen. End of.
Yeah. No.
And it's a mad one. Yeah.
One thing I will say is that I know this is just like, it sounds like bad vibes or whatever, but I think the first step is understanding that you cannot be too optimistic. You need to you really have to remind yourself that it is, at times it's going to feel like you versus the whole institution.
Yeah. So
you can never you can't fool yourself into thinking that the 3 or 4 years or decade, if you do medicine, that you're going to be at UCL is going to be doing anything. Do you know what I mean? So I really do think it's about doing what you can. And I think that it depends, I think you just have to do what you're good at and try to feed race into that, for example. So if you're a great graphic designer, do the work for ACS, do it for another black society, do it in your department. If you're a great event planner, plan the events in your department, stuff like that. You just have to take your talents and make them black, basically, which is unfortunate because, especially if you're an artist or whatever your talent is, you don't want it to just be about the black experience. But unfortunately for now, that's all we can really do. And I think it's also holding people accountable and calling people out by their names. Because I think it's very easy to be on your social media or be in a group of friends and say, I don't think it's right when you say this, or I think we need to decolonize the curriculum, and then you send it to your department. Like, you need to say, listen, Sophie, do not, I don't know Sophie's, but listen, Sophie, like, do not say that. Do you know what I mean? Or like, in the emails that I send to my department, I'm naming the names. I'm telling you who's got the good modules and who hasn't got the good modules, you know? Like, you have to do these things, because if you start addressing people generally, everyone else will start hiding.
Of course, yeah.
They'll hide behind the name of the department. If I'm saying to you, John Smith, what are you doing to support Black students? Who are you going to hide behind?
Yeah, because people don't want to take accountability, facts.
Who are you going to hide behind? So I think we all just have to do what we can to hold the people that are closest to us accountable, and like just offer our talents where we can. That's my view, but I don't know like what you guys think.
What do you guys, Blessing and Ikaay and Joshua, what steps can we take along with Jessica's suggestions to push forward a change?
But for me, I don't think it is possible to get the kind of mass kind of awakening that we need to educate every white person at UCL about race. You know what I mean? I think what's really important is that Black people, like what Jess was saying, use their talents to help the community, and also like form a stronger sense of community in the Black community at these institutions and wherever you go. I think community is like so powerful and so important, because the reason like we go to these lectures and things like this happen and we feel alienated, and you know, we have the imposter syndrome set in. This is always a problem with like Black people in predominantly white spaces, always a problem, is because we don't have that strong sense of community. And eventually with community and with numbers comes strength. And then you can start like enacting actual change. You know, sending emails, asking your professors, saying their names in all these emails, as opposed to addressing an email to like a department, which is like a much like softer way of going about the problem. I think, you know, the foundation is community and building from there.
Isn't today also
Black Pound Day?
Black Pound Day, yeah.
Black Pound Day, yeah.
Exactly.
It is.
The lines of what Ikaay and Jessica just suggested there. It's to support more Black communities, more Black-owned businesses, more Black-owned initiatives. Just come away from the whites, people, innit?
Lucky is what it is.
I'm dead, but no,
demonetized.
Demonetized, yeah, literally. Our channel's gonna get demonetized. I love bro. Like,
but I'll move on to a different platform if they don't want to accept.
We ain't taking your money. We ain't taking your money.
If you don't accept what we're saying here, you don't deserve us something anyway. So, no, I don't care. So listen, what do you think?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's been quite interesting, I think, from my point of view, because I feel like in my department, like I didn't even know about any N-word situations or anything. Like I was just told when I saw the letter and things like that. So I think I've personally been quite lucky, just because the people that I know in my course are quite vocal and do speak out about these things. But I think in terms of what we can do, especially if you're not in that kind of situation, you haven't got those people, I think it's about talking about your experiences with your friends, making sure you stand up for yourself, and speak to your departments if things are wrong, like speak to your tutors and whoever like needs to be spoken to. Because I feel like it's very easy to kind of just brush things off and think, I'm just here to get my degree, I don't want to be like a problem or burden. And I think I sometimes almost like felt like that kind of, but I was like, okay, it's a piece of paper, whatever, but like I don't feel comfortable. I need to make sure I feel comfortable in paying X amount of money. So if I go to a lecture, I shouldn't like think of not going to a lecture because I'm scared you're going to say the N-word. If you see what I mean. Like, they've got a duty of care as well as a responsibility to teach. So I think it's super, super key to make sure that you're speaking out, in that you're putting pressure on people. I think applying pressure, I don't ever feel afraid to apply pressure.
Agreed. Honestly, everything that you guys said is important, especially like having a sense of community. And on that, I know and also feel like there's not enough of us at elitist universities. And that's because of what Ikaay was talking about, imposter syndrome. We don't see enough of us at the UCLs, the Kings, the Oxbridge, the Harvards. Like, we just don't see enough of us. So a lot of us are discouraged in sixth form, whatever schools you may have gone to even apply in the first place. And then once we're here, we end up feeling alienated.
The only reason I applied for UCL is because you got me to do it.
Yeah, that is true. But even look what happened when we did apply, and our sixth form, the heads of sixth form told us we're not going to get anywhere in life, basically. He told us we're not going to get into UCL, like, we're not going to get anywhere in life. And that's what I mean.
Yeah, we said that so many times, but yeah, we were told up front, like, you're not getting anywhere.
And that's what I mean.
Look at you now, bro.
Look at us now, like, all sitting here. Look at us now, exactly. So
look at us.
Exactly. So I feel like, and not even just Black students, staff as well. Like, there needs to be more Black staff in admissions. So I honestly believe in positive action for admissions forms in terms of applications for certain courses. Yeah. So if a Black student and a white student have the same exact A-level grades, and it's no problem for the white student to go somewhere else because they probably have an offer at Oxbridge, give the offer to the Black person. If they have exactly the same qualifications, give it to that person. Because chances are, whoever your admissions team is, they're unconsciously, discriminating against a Black student based on their name on the CV, their personal statement, and might not identify with a lot of the things they're going through. So I think that's important as well. It's just, it's mental. Shuhan, any thoughts?
I think what Ikaay said was very true. We have this idea or this perception of the change, or we've lost Blessing, I believe.
Oh, did we lose her?
I think we did.
Yeah, we lost her. All right. Okay, wait, cool. She's coming back.
Okay. So like, we want this type of change we want, and what we want to achieve is very right. And with how the system has been and how the system is, we can't just go in there and it will just change. Obviously, in our ideal world, it should be like that. Mm-hmm. But again, with the things that you guys have touched on, I think small incremental steps in increasing the numbers of ethnic minority students or staff members, just changing up the narrative that's currently out there. Because you walk into a corridor and you're or a staff room, for instance, in UCL, even if there is any, you're expected to see majority white lecturers or whatever in there. We need to change that up. We need to have more, like in the higher universities, more diversity. More diversity, and then it goes from there to then tackling the curriculum, which is a lot tougher.
Exactly. I mean, the numbers are shocking. I don't know if any of you were in the UCL town hall that UCL organized itself, that had the provost sitting in on it, and it was a bunch of Black academic staff and one PhD student discussing racism at UCL and decolonising the curriculum. And when they were reading out the stats, I was just like, there's something like 4,000 academic staff, and of that, I think it was something like 30 were Black. Out of
I think only 4 are women as well.
Only 4 women as well, on top of that.
Yeah.
The number was just ridiculous, and I can't remember the numbers for academic students as well, but it's equally as shocking.
It's not a joke.
It's not a joke. It's not a joke at all. So it's, and on, like, all of you touched on this, it's using what you can to build a community. And the reason why actually I was happy to have you guys on, and thank you so much for doing so, is because you're all doing exactly that. Like, you're using the platforms you have. So on that, talking about that, Ikaay and Blessing have YouTube channels. So in the cards, their YouTube channel will be there. So sub to them. But let's go. Start subbing. But on that, for example, Ikaay, you were the ACS president. For the current year. Man like Presido. Man like. But one of the things you touched on, I remember actually in your speech when you were running for the position, was to talk about LGBTQ rights amongst the Black community and making sure there's more inclusion within the ACS.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about a bit about your time and like how you've definitely like done an amazing job as an ACS president, and obviously literally spearheading and championing us and ensuring we're all being more of a collective community. So how was that for you?
Bro, when I was giving that speech and I brought up the fact that LGBTQ plus people are largely underrepresented in the ACS, and there's like terrible sentiment towards them in the Black community in general.
100%, I agree with that. I can
looks
imagine.
I got.
Yep.
And I guarantee you, I lost like so many votes at that moment.
Yeah.
I really, that's the one regret I have, like, during my presidency. I really wish I had done more.
Honestly, bro, you did a lot. Like you're saying, there's a massive underlying and sometimes not underlying disregard for the LGBTQ community amongst black people, which is difficult. But the great thing is, you know, you are president and you've done a lot for us to, you know, speak up and have positions and feel comfortable as well. So that's something amazing you did. And then, like, even blessing, so you're going to be the welfare officer for the next academic year.
You got blessing.
So blessings in there as well. So how has that been for you, and like what are your plans for that? And you're launching the UCL Africa conference, so if you can talk on that as well.
Yeah, sure. I was really, really passionate about ACS because I feel like for me it definitely helped shape my experience as a first year. And then I think I was most passionate about running for the welfare and volunteering in particular, because I feel like, again, it's just about having numbers, but making those numbers count. And I feel like it's super key to make sure everyone who's black at UCL feels comfortable whilst they're here and feels supported and feels like they can really strive and thrive comfortably. I'm kind of like, I want to be the person who can do that. And also in terms of LGBTQ as well, I think there were some discussions about trying to get an officer, I think, for that as well. So I think this year we're trying to really build on this happening last year, because I feel like last year's committee has done a great job. And I'm just really excited to kind of continue that work. I hope that we will get an officer. And then in terms of the conference, so essentially UCL never had a conference as far as I know, which I was kind of shocked to hear. But I kind of got involved because I'm kind of like into media and marketing. So I was like, let me try and kind of help with that. Basically what we're doing is trying to change and challenge perspectives regarding Africa as a continent, as impoverished like that, but also the way people see it as a bloc. People think Africa's a country and it's not, do you know what I mean? So I think it's important to kind of get that straight, but also to get people like investing and finding like practical and innovative ways that they can kind of get involved with things in Africa, whether it be where they're from or other places, and kind of just knowing more. And also kind of talking about these black issues in general. We've kind of been doing that a bit on our Instagram page. And I think our theme this year is Africa 2050. So kind of like visualizing your dream Africa, kind of like just investing in Africa and what we can do as students, what companies can do, businesses can do, etc. So I'm kind of really excited to do that as well.
Amazing. No, that's sick. And I'm definitely excited for that. So we'll link everything in the description for all of their Instagram pages for UCL Africa Conference, their personals and everything. And then Jessica, Black Discussions Club. Tell us about it.
Black Discussion Club, it's been a journey, man. It's been a journey. I think I've honestly learned so much. Like, Black Discussion Club started because in my first year, I don't think ACS just wasn't doing it for me, to be completely honest. I feel like ACS, I mean, first of all, ACS is huge. It's the whole of Africa as a continent, and then the whole of the Caribbean. Like, it's just too much. And also, like, not all Africans are black. So our experiences are not the same. So even if ACS was a political force, I don't feel as though it would represent my interest as a black student. I think a lot of the time it was just sort of there for like the socials and what have yous, but to be honest, I wasn't like really at uni for that. It's not something I was necessarily looking forward to. And I think me and my friend Khadija, who like founded the Black Discussion Club, we had always just wished that there were more politically charged discussions about the black community and how we can organize ourselves. So in second year started, we were like, okay, we're gonna stop talking shit about ACS. And we're just gonna do our own thing and be there for ourselves. So we got all the signatures that we needed, like to apply to become a society.
How was that process? I asked because I know the reaction is going to be a madness.
It's just... It was a blessing.
Yeah.
It was a blessing in disguise. I will say that, because I mean, getting the signatures was so easy. Like, seeing Black students around campus, telling them about it. You know, we got 30 signatures in like no time. It was not a problem. Like, we got everything up and running. Socials, emails, logos, everything was done. We'd even like planned in advance like all the events we were going to do, because you have to do that to apply to become student union affiliated. So we applied, and then they replied back to us saying, sorry, but we're not going to allow you to be student affiliated with the student union because they do not support societies that discriminate based on race or whatever. Yeah. Which I was thinking, that is some bullshit, because there is God knows how many country societies. There's like French society, there's French speaking society.
There's so many sub-societies of other societies. But
so many. Like, just say that you're scared of the word Black.
Literally.
Just
that's honestly what it is.
And like, I remember Khadija and I, we were kind of debating the name. Like, maybe we should, you know, soften it a bit. But if we changed the name to anything other than Black Discussion Club, we would have just done exactly what we complained about with ACS, in the fact that it's not a shared Black experience.
Yeah.
So obviously we did that. We paid the price for it, and we were just like, fuck it, like we're still gonna do it anyway. So we got in touch with the BME officer, who's Sandy. She's
amazing, and she hosted the town hall the other day. Yeah,
absolute godsend. She supported us with everything, booked the rooms for us, and we started off like quite small. We did events on colorism, we did events on homophobia in the Black community, we did one on like Black people media. Like we talked about so many different issues, and it was honestly such a great experience. But the only thing I will say is that when we were pitching the idea and like telling students about it and telling them to get involved, everyone was like, yeah, like, oh my gosh, like, we needed this space, blah, blah, blah. But when it's time to show up, people weren't showing up. And I think it's very easy to say, you know, white people need to show up, da, 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 needs to show up, cool. But we need to start showing up for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we need to start doing these things and keeping our word and sticking to what we said we're going to do. Like, if you care about this issue, you need to be there. It doesn't make sense that we had an event on colorism and there was only one Black man there and one light-skinned person, who was me. It doesn't make sense. It's not good enough. Do you know what I mean? Even the LGBT event that we did, like, there was no queer people there, and it was a shame, because I think a lot of students will complain about the ACS and say, oh, well, the LGBT events, where's this event, where's this event? But now that we've given you that space, where you at?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's really important that we support these societies that are up and coming, or these groups that are up and coming, because listen, if people don't support this, and this is one thing I will say, that change needs to be structural. If people don't support this now, when we graduate and we leave, who is going to do the rest of the work?
Exactly.
Because I remember I was in a meeting with the social sciences department, and there's a girl, the girl who arranged it, her name's Afia, she's a third-year law student. She had a position in the Law Society where she had done so many outreach programs for all sorts of students from different walks of life, genders and sexualities. And after her time was done, her term was sort of up, the next year, the new person that got elected basically didn't do any of the outreach. All the stuff that she had planned for the entire year were completely dismissed, and there was no structural change. And that's the issue. Like, we cannot hope that someone is political enough in the younger years. We can't do that. No. We need to make sure that these structures are staying there and they're not going anywhere. For example, like how Blessing was saying about how there might be an LGBT officer, that needs to be a permanent position, because God forbid next year, no one in the society is part of the community, so there's no LGBT officer. It shouldn't matter that there's no gay people. It shouldn't matter there's no trans people. It shouldn't matter that whoever's not there isn't represented. Do you know what I mean? So I think from the Black Discussion Club, I really learned a lot. I've learned so much about all of the topics that we've discussed like throughout the years. I've learned a lot, like general management skills, but also like how to manage my optimism, which I think is really important, because if you don't manage your optimism, you're going to crash and burn, and like you'll just give up.
You'll be discouraged.
You'll be like, oh, the world is evil, like nothing is going to change in my lifetime, so like what's the point? And as soon as you start thinking that, like you've lost. So that was my experience with Black Discussion Club. Like me and Khadija, we're still going to go through with it. We are opening it up now to all students, regardless of university. And hopefully like we'll continue to do these events, and hopefully people show up. If not, we can say we tried, you know.
No, honestly.
But yeah.
No, that's good. Honestly, like I think it's so important that we're doing our part in the space we're in. You know, we're a minority group of academics in a elitist university, and let's be honest, the racism is systemic and structural, and it's ingrained in the system, and it's hard to unroot that. But we can do our part little by little, and like you're saying, it's like passing the buck onto those after us to continue the work is important. I'm leaving UCL this year. I decided to become a sponsorship and careers exec this year, and that taught me an incredible amount about why we need more Black people in top paying jobs, just like our white counterparts, and how difficult it is to even get that to happen, how difficult it is to get a flipping signature from the student union, to actually liaising with you know, all of these big, you know, the big four banks or whoever it may be. So it's change that we all need. So honestly, yeah, definitely make sure to check all of these guys' stuff out in the link in the description. And Srihan, do you have anything else to say on that?
You guys literally passed that perfectly.
Literally, nothing else to say, right? Perfect. Well, all right. I think that's about it. Like, thank you so much, guys, for being a part of this, and I hope you guys listened like with open ears, because these guys had incredible things to say, and it's a learning process for myself and all of us. So yeah, I think
we've brought everybody here together to talk on here. However, Ikaay's got my YouTube channel, which he puts out bangers on bangers. Same with Blessing. She's puts out
road to 2K.
Jessica's platforms out there. We're showing you that, you know, there's other ways you can get information. There's other people out there. Start supporting them. Start sharing their things. Start sharing the love, and start educating yourself before you feel like you need to educate others.
Exactly.
If you're not Black and you're watching this, think about your actions, think about your circle, and think about how you can make change.
Raw, man. Nice one. Wraps up nicely. All right, cool.
Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Now you know what, the Saturday evening out to sit here with us, and you know, you share like amazing stuff. Honestly, I've been enlightened from this episode, and I'm sure we'll do more to come.
Now, trust me, these that were spitting fire bars the other day in the Black Discussions town hall. I had to get them out for this one.
Josh shortlisted you guys. It's like, we gotta get these.
Yeah, listen, I was writing down the bars. I was like, yo, the mixtape's gonna be a
We're so angry.
Josh was like, nobody else. We've gotta get these.
Yeah, we've gotta get these lot. Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll catch you guys in the next one. And again, it's an open door policy here. Once you've been on, you're always free to come back whenever you want.
And hopefully we'll do an in-person one next time as well.
Right. Fingers crossed.
Oh, hopefully.
That'd be really nice. That'd actually be really nice. But yeah, so this is a one that's a very important, powerful, and special. One for the history books, as it's the most guests we've had on one episode. So.
And 1,300 subs. So
yeah.
So yeah. All right. Catch you in the next one.